Ranting and raving. Time for more draft talk. So today we are going to we're actually going to combine two position groups. We're going to talk about the big boys today. So no, that does not mean the offensive line. I am not doing any draft content on offensive line for two reasons. Offensive line film is boring to me, and I have no idea what I'm talking about it, so I'm not going to do it. It's that simple. We're going to talk about defensive tackle and edge prospects for this year's draft. So, as all the other position groups, I'm looking at guys projected for the first three rounds. Also, like the first three groups, we're not looking at everybody. So, these are the players I specifically watched and my thoughts on them. If there are any players you think I missed, um, feel free to leave them in the comments section. Maybe if enough people leave somebody in there, I'll go back and watch them, and maybe we'll do a follow up video or something like that. But these are the guys that I watched so far. Obviously, there is a Saints focus on here, but my thoughts are also going to be generalized, just as how I feel about the player in general. But of course, clearly by the logo behind me and the shirt I'm wearing, Saints bias. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and get right into it. First guy on the list today is Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. Big boy. 6'5, 313. So I think he's probably going to go in the first round. If the Saints were picking in the late teens to early 20s, that targeted range would say first round, because I would be comfortable taking him there, although I'd prefer him in the second. More because of the style of player and less because I don't think he's necessarily a first round pick. Harmon's a guy I think he's going to be an impactful NFL player. He's a guy, I think you can put him in the middle, like you could put him at nose. I think you could put him in a 3-4, 4-3, like a lot of people cover nowadays. Like teams run so many fronts nowadays, like a straight up, like they're just a 4-3 or they're just a three. Like it doesn't really exist, but like your base, like what you start with, and then operate from there. Um, I think he can play in both. He's as you can see from just the size and weight, he's a really big guy. Um, my initial impression of him, really good size, really powerful, really impressive athlete for how big he is. There's actually few guys in this class that are that way. Was a huge part of the success of that Oregon defense, which was a very successful unit last year during the football season. Defensive tackle can be, like, to a degree, hard to project, just because like you'll have some guys that'll look really dominant in college, and then you get into the pros and they don't really do much. I mean, that happens everywhere, but I think Harmon is a guy I'm pretty comfortable saying he's not going to struggle to be productive pretty early on at the professional level. The combination of his power, his balance, his technique, but also his movement skills, his ability to move in space. Like you put all of those things together, I just don't see him failing. Now it could happen. Certainly injuries could of course have that, but that's like literally every position and every player. Like you get hurt, you're not on the field, you don't produce. Duh. But I think he's a really safe pick. He's not like a gimme player in that either in the first or the second round I'm just sprinting to the podium to grab him. But I think he's a really good player. So next guy on the list actually is a gimme player, and it's part of why Harmon isn't in that tier for me. So Kenneth Grant, spoiler alert, one of two guys from the Michigan Wolverines that are going to be talked about today. Kenneth Grant, 6'4", 331, a little bit bigger than Harmon. Kind of the same profile, but like better. Massive massive human being, but even with all that size, great agility. For that size, great, speed. Like within a phone booth, like is he, what is his 40? Couldn't care less. If he's running 40 yards down the field, something has gone horribly wrong. But within that 5 to 8 yard range that you need him to run, reasonably quick, good speed, good quickness, good lateral agility, excellent power, moves very, very well. He's the type of guy I would love to see paired with Brian Brzee. Like if he's there, I don't think he will be, but if he's there at pick 40, depending on what you do at 9, and depending on how the board falls, like he's a gimme player, meaning like he's a guy, unless there's another guy who's also a gimme player, like you sprint to the podium and you take him and you don't overthink it. Easy evaluation. He was productive. He's shown this versatility. He's shown the ability to be a pass rusher. He's shown the ability to be a run stuffer. He's shown the ability to, one gap, two gap nose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like he's done all those things for Michigan, and I think he'll have no trouble doing them at the pro level. And I think one of the only reasons he's not higher touted, and again, I don't think he makes it to 40, but if he does, it's an easy pick. One of the reasons why he's, which we'll talk about in a minute, not higher touted is his teammate. But before we get to him, let's talk TJ Sanders. So not as mammoth size as the previous two. So TJ's still very large human being, 6'4", 297 pounds. He's another guy like I'm interested in him. Round 2 to 5 guy. I don't see him making it to round 5. It just says 2 to 5 because there's no way in hell he makes it to 7. Like there's some massive character thing came out. He ain't making it to 7. So it's just a range, folks. Don't read too much into it. If we didn't have Brian Brzee, my interest level for him would be even higher. Um, Now, when I call him undersized, again, he's 6'4", 297. If I'm looking at it from the lens of I want him as a nose, I want him as a guy to put next to Brian Brzee. I want him as a run stuffer and a power player and a guy that matches Brzee in his pass rush and those elements. He's undersized. If I'm looking at him as I don't have Brian Brzee, or I'm looking to move Brian Brzee and replace him, or those types of things, different evaluation, different context, would be extremely interested in TJ Sanders. I think he's going to be a really good pro. I don't think he's the complementary piece for the Saints that they need for this roster. And so that's where it's like, I'd be interested in the player. Like if he's there in the 3rd or the 4th round, like it reaches a point, especially with having 2 picks in those rounds, where you go, the value's too good. I don't know how you pass up on the guy. But because of those redundancies in skill set, it's difficult to have too high of an interest level in him before that. Now we get to the reason why Kenneth Grant is not a household name. So Mason Graham, 6'4", 296. This is where measurables aren't everything. So now you look at this photo. This is a nice kid, nice little teddy bear. I'll tell you a secret. On the field, not a teddy bear, grizzly bear. Very, very angry grizzly bear. I mean that in the best of possible ways. I remember, I think he also went to the University of Michigan when Ruiz was drafted. Did his little locker room dance. They called him a dancing bear. He's a panda. This is a grizzly. Mason Graham to me is one of the top 5 players in this draft. Mason Graham is a really easy player to overthink because it's really easy to just look at. We just saw one guy that's his size and 2 guys that are bigger than him, and look at his measurables and look at the underwear Olympics, where like a guy like who, by the way, we won't be talking about today, Captain Underpants, Shamar Stewart. Yeah, won't be talking about him because the only time he's produced anything is the underwear Olympics, and I don't actually care about that much. watch. 1.5 sacks, like, yeah, get out of here. Mason Graham's really, really good at football. And as it turns out, um, that actually matters more than anything else. Being really, really good at football is important if you're going to be, wait for it, a football player. And it is actually amazing to me how often NFL evaluators forget that whole, but he's good at football part of the evaluation process. Um, Mason Graham is one of two defensive tackles in this class that I would consider taking in the top 15. He's a top five pick to me. Um, he's got great short area quickness. He's very strong. He's got fantastic technique. Really good with his hands. He's got good feet, good balance. Very strong. He's just really good at football. Makes a ton of impact plays. He can affect the game as a pass rusher, can affect the game as the run, stand guys. Like he does all the things you want him to do. And he's the ideal player to stick next to a guy like Brian Brzee. So, like if he's there at 9, outside of the quarterback position, like if Shadur or Dart are there at 9, there is no other player projected to be available in the first round that would be there at 9, because like Cam Ward ain't going to be there at 9. If Mason Graham is there, then I am taking. He is the pick. It's that simple. It's done. That there is no argument. You just take Mason Graham. Period. Next guy on the list. Personally, my favorite defensive tackle in this draft. Um, so here's my personal theory. We'll see if I'm right. I've been right before, certainly been wrong before. I think in 5 years that people are going to look back on this draft and go, how the hell did they let Walter Nolan get to pick X? Whatever pick he gets taken. I think he's possibly the best defensive lineman in this draft. I think he's probably the best pass rusher in this draft, especially the defensive tackle position. Um, Again, could be wrong, but I think he is going to be an incredibly impactful player at the NFL level immediately. Him and Mason Graham, to me, are both guys who should be top 15 picks. Walter Nolan, I think, is a little bit more of a playmaker, pass rusher type. Mason's a little bit more of a foundational guy. Now, they're both impact players. Make no mistake about that. I like the Walter Nolan type a little bit more because I'm more of a flash guy. Like, I just happen to like, the sizzle. Um, so that's really where I sit on that. Again, he's a guy I would consider him a 9. I don't think the Saints are. If hypothetically, let's say Dart or Shador or Genty or a guy like that is available at 9, and let's say the Colts or somebody wants to move up to get him, and you move down to 12 or 14 or whatever, and then Nolan is there at that spot, but I picked up an additional mid-round pick so I can further build out this roster, I am sprinting to the podium and going, so let me get this straight. I get to get potentially a dominant interior defensive lineman and have the only, probably the only blue chip pass rusher this defensive line has, which it desperately needs, and additional ammunition in a draft that is loaded in the mid rounds. Check, 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 check. Yes, please. Easiest decision I would make all week. And I'd take him at 9. Like I'm a firm believer. If you take a guy at 14, you take him at 9, unless there is someone available at 9 that you believe is unequivocally better than that player. Which in this draft, unless Mason Graham falls, I do not believe would be the case. I would take Walter Nolan at 9. Do I think the Saints are going to do that? I do not. Next guy on the list. Y'all ain't gonna agree with me on this one, and I'm perfectly okay with it. I don't think Mikel Williams is gonna be. My interest level in him is medium. He's got great measurables, 6'5", 260 pounds. I wouldn't touch him until the second round. Um, some of this is bias against Georgia, and it's not because I have an issue with the Bulldogs or anything like that. It's just because, to a degree, it's somewhat of, I have an issue with like Alabama quarterbacks. To a degree, Alabama corners sometimes. Um, Guys who come from programs where the roster is loaded can be tougher evaluations because you often see players where they're put in positions to look their best and they're not it's not possible for teams to game plan against them and scheme against them as much as you would actually expect. And so you see a lot of all-star game football. And it makes evaluations harder. It doesn't make them impossible, but it makes it harder. My issue with Michael Williams is I see a great athlete. I don't see a great football player, and I don't see a great pass rusher. Now, his teammate, Jalen Walker, I see a great football player. He is a weapon in the front seven. I think Walker actually made Michael look a lot better than he is. Um, I just don't see him. I won't say that. It's not that I don't see him having success because he could be really, really good, really, really fast. I don't see him being predictable. And as a couple other guys we're going to talk about here, my issue is the Saints are so talent poor and are so lacking in playmakers on this defense and really on the offense too. Today we're talking defensive line. They are in desperate need of reliable players. They're really not in a position where they can just take a flyer on a guy who's like, hey, he could be a complete bust or he could be a superstar. And that's my issue with Michael Williams is he could be a complete bust or a superstar. Like his technique isn't refined. You watch him on tape, you really like you see a guy. It's like he has flashes. Like yeah, God, that's a good football player. He's an amazing athlete, man. And then you see a lot of times where it's like that dude don't have any idea what he's doing. Like he's just going out there and being athletic, and there's so many great athletes around him. Like the opposition doesn't really have a chance, and he's doing stuff. Is that going to work at the NFL level? A couple times a game, maybe, but like the rest of the time, bad things might happen. It's just that lack of predictability. That's my issue. For another team, he could be a great draft pick. Just my issue is for the Saints. And actually, another guy, James Pierce Jr., I have the exact same issue. So 6'5", 245. Like, here's my issue with James Pierce. And we'll get right into it on this one. Here's my con for him. My concern is that he might be Vic Beasley. I think he's a better athlete than Vic Beasley was, but like Vic Beasley had that one magical season for the Falcons where he like converted like 26% of his pressures into sacks or some absurd number, and like some people were like, "Oh my God, he's an elite pass rusher," and it's like, no, that's a completely unsustainable number, and like he turned right back into a pumpkin the rest of his career. That's my worry with James Pierce. Now he's a ridiculous athlete, like insane speed for a defensive end, like really really impressive movement skills. Like look, if he can get to like 255, even 260, and retain 90% of his speed and quickness, like it very much becomes a different question with him because he's good at speed to power, like technique wise, like he's good. Like he's just a little light in the pads. I don't know for sure he can do that, and he's got good pass rush technique. It's not amazing, but it's good. He's got great instincts. He's juicy as all hell. But again, my concern is its predictability. In a vacuum, like if we had a better built roster, if this was 2020 and we still had a pretty good roster, like it's aging, but it's still pretty good, and we're looking for like we need an impact guy, we need an infusion of youth and talent. God, I'd take him in a second. In a second. We're not in that situation, and that's really my whole issue. And then on top of that, I really do believe if you're going to take a James Pierce Jr., you need a really good defensive interior line to help keep him clean as much as you can so that you can try to create one-on-ones for him to try to get to the quarterback. And until proven otherwise, our defensive interior stinks. Like, God chose 31. We just traded for him. He's okay, but like meh. And like the rest of these bums are bums. Saunders is a bum. Like the other guys are bums. They were bums last year. We were a bad defensive line last year. Like make all the injury excuses you want. The Saints defense was healthy for most of the year last year, and they were bums. It was bad. And that's my only concern with him. Like he's probably going to go somewhere else and he's going to be a great player and I'm going to look stupid. But specifically for the Saints, I just don't have confidence in taking that risk. Um, oh boy, speaking of guys that don't have confidence in taking the risk, the prospect here for me, which is really just my interest level, this is almost a low. 6'3", 251. It's like a less athletic version of Pierce. Like honestly, um, Mike Green has super high production, like super high production. But he did it against lower levels of competition, which again, like if you're going to go against lower levels of competition, you should have super high production, especially if you're going to be drafted in the first round. Oh wait, the Saints did that. They drafted a guy who went against like lower levels of competition. Oh wait, he had no production. Oh, they did that twice. How does Mickey Loomis still have a job? There's a multi-billion-dollar question. Anyway, um, he's a little undersized. He's not hyper athletic. Like he's a good athlete. He's not a crazy athlete where you're like, okay, he's undersized, but he's an absurd athlete. James Pierce is an absurd athlete. So it's like, okay, well, is he a technician? Well, he's not a crazy technician. I think he's going to bust out. He's a name, so we're looking at him. I have medium interest because, like, look, if he's there in round 3 or 4, would I take a flyer on him? Sure. Once you start getting in round 3 or 4, it's like, you're betting on upside largely. Am I betting a first 2 rounds or really even like before 71? Like those first 3 picks on him? Absolutely not. I'm just not. I don't think he's going to be a good player. He doesn't project well to me. I didn't see anything where when I watched him that I went, that dude's going to wreck shop on Sundays. And again, maybe I'll be wrong, but I didn't see anything that gave me any type of certainty for that, and I'm not taking that risk. JT Tuimoloau. I probably butchered that, but I hope I got it right. 6'4", 265. So he's a medium interest guy. He's another round of 3, 4 guy, but he's a very different archetype to me. So I actually think he's a very good football player. I think that if the Saints had Trey Hendrickson, if the Saints just hadn't been like, oh, guy that works hard, who needs that? Ugh. I would love to pick a guy like this up in like the 3rd round or the 4th round. He's a super high effort guy, good technique, solid athlete, plays his ass off. Not amazing rush technique, not an amazing athlete, not amazing production. Like I don't see him ever being like the top guy, but he's a cleanup guy, and don't underestimate the value of that. But like the best version of him to me is like the best possible version of him is probably Carl Granderson, and we already have Carl Granderson. I just don't see where he's getting snaps and where he's creating production. Now, again, you get to the 2nd, 3rd round pick or into round 4, anything like that. If they haven't taken, an edge guy, like they need depth along the defensive line. They need high effort guys who play hard, who play smart, who actually know how to play football. Like there's tremendous value in that. No question, I'd draft him. I'm just not taking him any higher because I just don't see the upside. Um, his teammate though, Jack Sawyer. So the Saints have a propensity to draft guys from the Ohio State. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. We do have Stinky Pete. Had a great rookie year and hasn't been good since. But um, I really like Jack Sawyer. I think Jack Sawyer is a better athlete than people think he is. We all know why people don't think Jack Sawyer is athletic, which is fine. I don't think he's like an insane athlete, but he's a good athlete. You know, good size, 6'4", 260. He's not like super light in the pads. Good movement skills. Plays super hard. Coaches on gritty, all the goodness. Has all of those things. He's a really good mid-round prospect to me. I'd consider him in the second. I'd love him in the third. Like again, kind of depending on what you take above him. Like if you go, hypothetically, you get Tedroy McMillan, and then Mason Taylor or Arroyo, the first two picks, and Sawyer's sitting there at 71. I wouldn't be mad at all if you took him at 71. I think that would be a great pick. Um, I think he would. I think he actually would be a guy who would have a lot of impact. I think he's a guy that you can line up opposite of Chase Young. I think he's a guy who could potentially actually become your leading pass rusher. Believe it or not, I think he's a guy who brings a lot of the same types of elements that Trey brought. He's quicker than you think he is. He's got good technique. He's got good get off. He's got good hands, and he's just got a relentless motor. Um, and you put all those pieces together and you get a highly productive pass rusher. Now, do I see him developing into a guy who's going to get you 17 sacks a season like Trey has become? I mean, statistically speaking, I would say no, because that's pretty rare. But are the tools there for him to become a double digit sack guy? I think so, yeah. So I definitely would consider taking him in the mid rounds and not flinch on it. Um, Another guy, kind of the same thing. Landon Jackson, 6'6", 264. I actually intentionally grabbed a photo with him with a helmet on because when this guy doesn't have a helmet, when he has a helmet off, the only thing that pops into my head is Kevin Garnett has a penchant for saying terrible things to people when he's on a basketball court, and it makes me think of those terrible things, and it makes me laugh, and it makes me feel like I'm a bad person. Um, Landon Jackson he's a weird prospect. He's very feast or famine, and when he's on, he's really really freaking good. I think he's a guy like you. Look, the Saints did just bring in a reportedly fantastic defensive line coach. That'll certainly help a lot. Um, he's the guy. He needs some more coaching, but you take his athletic profile, the length, the size, the speed, the agility relative to that size. Does have a good motor. He's got production. He's shown the ability to take over games. He's the type of guy you take him in the second or the third round, and he can become an impact player for a team really, really quickly. So would I be mad if they took him? Absolutely. Um, Now these next couple of guys, actually, really, I mean, there's one guy on here. It's the best player in the draft. We're gonna very briefly talk about him. He's not the next guy, but like, there's absolutely a 0% chance the Saints drafting him, but he's obligatorily on here. But this next guy is actually one of the two guys I most hope the Saints draft. So Jordan Burch is let's just call him a mid-round draft bag. He's a guy. If he's there at 71, I really consider it. But if he's there, I think it's at 90, if I'm remembering it right. I'm having a brain fart and I'm too lazy to look it up. So we're just going to go with 90, although that might not be the pick. But regardless, the second, third round pick the Saints have. If he's there, I absolutely consider taking him there. Um, Here's how I describe him. If Peyton Turner always played hard and was good at football, it'd look a lot like Jordan Burch. 6'4", 280 pounds. He's really athletic, moves really, really well for that size. Like he doesn't, when you watch him play, you don't go, oh, that guy looks 280. When I watch Peyton Turner play, he looked 280. Like he's got that thick build, looks like he's 280, moves like he's 280. Occasionally, like makes quick moves, but a lot of the time, more of a power player. Bursch actually has the speed and the quickness and the explosiveness to really become what I think potentially could be a mid-round steal as a pass rusher. To me, he's a mid-round guy who's in that gimme tier. Like if he's there, again, I'd consider him at 71, but if he's there at 90, and especially if somehow he makes it into the fourth round, which I don't think he will, that's an instant grab for me. Um, I'm really, really high on him. There's a couple other guys who project to be towards the mid rounds that look like they're going to be really, really good pass rushers as well. I haven't watched them as much, so they're not on the list. Doesn't mean they're not going to be good. It just means I haven't watched them enough to have an opinion, so probably shouldn't talk about them. Imagine that, people on ESPN. Stephen A. Smith. Next guy is the guy we alluded to earlier, Bill Carter. He's the best player in the draft. Like it's that simple. He's Micah without the issues. Um, Adam nicknamed him the Booty Bandit. Like, yeah, it's really simple. He's the best player of the draft. He's an edge. He's here. Now let's get to my favorite guy. I'm not even gonna try that last name. Princely. Princely, you will never get this last name right. 6'4", 245. He is the exact type of edge rusher I think Saints fans have wanted the team to take for a long time, and they have. Now, if you'll remember when I talked about Pierce, I talked about a guy who's light in the pads. Now, Pierce and Princely are roughly the same size. Why did I say that about Pierce and not Princely? Well, remember earlier I said something about it's not just the measurables, it's how you play. It's about play style. To me, Pierce is very much a stand up rusher guy. He's almost an outside linebacker, and he's very much a straight line guy. And because of that, he can get stood up a lot. Princely, also a speed rusher, but this is a guy who can dip, rip, and he loves to spin. He's got a nasty spin move. Super productive player. And because of the combination of level of competition, level of production, athletic profile, traits, like actually watching the guy, like you put all those things together, he's a guy. The only scenario, because really the Saints desperately need weapons, desperately. The only scenario where I would be okay with back to back defensive picks in this year's draft is if Mason Graham dropped to 9, or if they decided to take Nolan, because I already said I'd be fine with him at 9. If Princely was there at 40 and they decided to double down and then just go, hey, our defensive line sucks and these are studs and we're just going to instantly make this defensive line really good, I would not complain. I'm that high on Princely. I think he's got a chance to be uh, outside of Carter, who again is the best player in the draft. I think he could be the best edge in this draft. Um, I think he's really, really good. I think he's going to be good early as a pro. I think he's going to be really productive, and I would love to get him in the second. I'd love to get him in the third. I do not think there is any chance he makes it to second, unless like some freaking bong pick comes out or something that just tanks his value. I don't think there's any chance. But yeah, would absolutely love to get him. So that is my opinions on the players, obviously, that I've watched. There are plenty more for the defensive line. You guys tell me if there's any that you think I missed, or if you disagree or have any thoughts on any of the guys that are here. Go ahead and put them in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment. Even if you don't have a comment, just throw a hoot at in the comment section. Hit that share it to friends, things like that. Helps people see the videos, helps the channel grow. Always appreciate it. So more content coming. Draft's just about a month away. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll talk to you guys soon.